Good afternoon. My name is Janvier Katawargwa. This is Jean Timogay.
My name is Jean Timogay.
Yes, we are today coordinators of this event. We want to thank each and every one of you who came here today to be with us on this 29th commemoration of Rwandan genocide against Tutsi. We want to thank Police Department of Vancouver to facilitate our walk to remember. We also received a message from Inspector Terry Young. He was supposed to be here with us, but due to his work, but he sent a message. His message. It's a quote from Martin Luther King, Birmingham letter. Freedom is never given voluntarily by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. You must demand it, for it will not be given freely. We want also to thank SFU for the use of this room. I would like to pass the microphone to Janti. She will go through today's program. Thank you. I want also to thank people from other communities and friends of Rwanda who are here today to support us. Thank you.
So the program today will be, we're going to spend 2 hours here. Thanks again to all of you who choosing to spend this afternoon with us. And for those who had a chance to go for a walk to remember, we thank you for that. So yeah, let's get started. So today marks 29 years after the Rwandan genocide against Tutsis. We're here to remember those lives lost during the month of April to July 1994. In those 100 days, over 1 million lives were tortured and killed for simply being Tutsis, a name that was given to us by a foreigner who invaded and colonized our motherland. They were strangers with intentions to steal and divide our home. In those 100 days, we saw unthinkable and witnessed unimaginable pain. We were chased out our homes, hunted down with nowhere to hide. They blocked the roads, surrounded our neighborhoods. We were trapped and nowhere to go but to surrender. Those who managed to find refuge in churches, they were surprised to learn that the priests have traded the white robes with machetes. They forgot and chose to ignore the same gospel they taught us for so long, the holy commandment, thou shalt not kill. If you ever visit Rwanda, you will notice that those churches are no longer a place of worship, rather a place where now there's mass graves, barriers, and memorial sites. And I usually wonder if only those walls could speak, you would hear the pain and suffering that those victims went through. UN camps were equally useless. We camped outside Etokichikiro for 2 days before we were let in on the April 9th. In the afternoon of the 11th, the UN broke the hardest and saddest news we never imagined that we would hear in those days. They had decided to leave Rwanda. They left 2,500 people in the hands of hungry animals who were waiting outside the fences, waving their machetes, waiting for the UN to leave. I remember men and women try to reason with the UN, but nothing could change their minds. They drove away as if our lives didn't matter. That night of April 11th, only a handful of us survived. 29 years ago, I think that our lives changed forever. Many of us survivors still wonder how we're still here. Many of us, we find it hard to justify how we're here. It's not that we hid better than those who were around us. It's not that we were stronger than them. I think it just simply konhabapfira gushira. We're here to remind you and tell the tales of those days. You see, those victims of the genocide we do talk about, they had names. They were our parents, they were our sisters, they were our mothers. They were our teachers, they were our best friends. These people had faces, these people, we knew them. They were part of our community. And these memories of them, and especially of what we went through in those 100 days, are sometimes, I would say most of the time, a heavy burden. Some of us survivors have promised ourselves to never revisit those dark days. And quite frankly, I don't blame them. These past 29 years have also been a time to figure out what those 100 days, the impact of those 100 days in our lives. And we had to learn how to move forward empty-handed. And as I talk to survivors, myself included, I think there's no right or wrong way to find what healing looks like. I don't think it's one size that fits all. Everyone has their own way of dealing with it. Many of us can stand here and say a few words, and others simply choose not to. And others have written books, but we're all doing the best that we can. In times like today, we're reminded of the progress we have made, individually and as a community. Even though it's challenging reliving those days, we feel loved and supported. When we can't stop the tears, remember that we have survived for a reason. Our lives were spared so that we can tell the world that these people mattered, to tell the genocide deniers that we will hold them accountable because we know and we still remember what happened. These 29 years have also been a time to reevaluate and learn from the past mistakes of our leaders. I appreciate that we have embraced the truth and the reconciliation, which has been a powerful tool that has been very instrumental in healing of our nation. Healing and forgiveness has been, and it's possible, because of the resilience of Rwandans. As we remember today, as we remember every day, I hope that you will find a moment to also let survivors know that we see them and we honor them. Thank you for being here today. We appreciate your presence. Amahoro kuri mwese. Peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Gentil. The following moment, we're gonna play a video that shows you a little bit of historical event. Nadine?
I think after watching that clip, I think it goes back to what I was talking about before, how many of us survivors wonder how we survived that. Because during the genocide, or even a bit before that, the energy of being a Tutsi was, I remember my parents wanting to do everything they could to try to save us, to try to pretend that we're not who we are or who the government say that we are. They had hoped for a peaceful Rwanda, but looking at that, the government failed us, our neighbors failed us. The people that look like us, the people that we spoke the same language, chose hatred that ended with our loved ones dead, not just dead, murdered and killed. On a days like this, as we mourn as a community together, it's so important. It's so important to take a moment and honor those who are here today, because it was not easy, and it hasn't been easy and continues not to be easy.
Thank you, Shanti. What I can add on this video, we are the first generation who've been in war, been in those discrimination against Tutsi, who've been in a war and experienced a little bit of peace. Our parents, since 1959, they never had a peace as Tutsis. The first genocide, I would say, started in 1959, and most of our families fled the country. After my parents passed, I was raised by my uncle, who left in 1959. They tried to come back in the country in all possible manner, by peace, by fighting. Nothing ever worked. In 1963, one of my auntie fled the country and went to Burundi. She was the one left with my dad, because she was they were younger. They couldn't leave in 1959. She was killed in 1994. She left in 1963. She came back in 80s, and she got killed in 1994. This genocide was not just from 1994, as these videos that we see. This is the closest to reality, but doesn't say everything. In 1994 was just the final. By 1963, in Bufundu, 10,000 Tutsis were killed on Christmas in front of the church. And some survived and stayed in the country. In 1973, there were other massacres again in Bufundu and somewhere else, Bugogwe. And being a Tutsi was like a sin. That's when they started forging numbers. Here, you can see the numbers that they had. They could present in UN. They say Tutsis were 14%. But the last numbers, the archives that were put out recently, what they used to call recensement, actually Tutsis were up to 30%. But they never put that number out, because they had this number of people who are allowed to be in higher institution, in higher education. Back in the days, to be smart wasn't enough to allow you to go in a higher education. There were numbers. They were saying, we gotta use this number of Tutsi. They are only one allowed to be in a higher education. So most of our, older brothers, they had to go into private schools, but in government institutions or
Yeah, they were marked on a higher percentage than the rest of the
yeah, you
Hutu
couldn't even, you
students.
could be the first in the class from nursery school to primary school, sixth season, and you're not allowed to be in a school unless you pay somewhere or
Yeah,
that's how it was. So this genocide was prepared. It wasn't triggered by this death of Habyarimana, as you can
the
see
plane
here.
crash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything I like to talk about this video?
No, how you mentioned that, we're the first generation. I remember when the genocide in 1994, I was 11 years old. I remember our parents talking about, we have extended family outside Rwanda, but I never understood why and how they got there. And I think our parents, because they grew up in the 50s and 60s, 70s, they have gone through so much trauma that as we're young, they were trying to protect us from those horrors and the stories and what they have gone through. And I think even in 1994, when the genocide was happening, our parents still had hope that it would be maybe a small number of people, but it wasn't on a scale that it was going to be. Yeah, it's here we are. The the next testimony is of a survivor. She is going to be sharing what she went through and what her experience was during the genocide. We do understand that sometimes these are hard stories to share, and that's why many survivors or those who can prefer to do it on a video versus maybe doing it, reliving the story in front of a big number of people, because I think that's easier to manage what you're going through or reliving the story. So the next testimony is going to be on a video. So bear with us. Thank you. That was a lot to unpack. Unfortunately, there's so many survivors. Most of us have similar to those stories or worse, or not even trying to compare, just there are many stories like hers. What I think one of the toughest questions she was asked was, how did this impact you? I think it's hard to, personally as a survivor, it's hard to define how what happened in Rwanda, how it impacted my life. I think now after 29 years, it's now that some of us are going to therapy or opening up to the idea of therapy. And I remember in my 20s, I used to walk around thinking, oh, this didn't affect me in any way, or I'm thriving, I'm good. Everyone is figuring out how the post-traumatic stress, how to deal with those images that we never leave our minds and our hearts, those constant memories that we live with. It's hard to put in words how that the genocide impacted us. But I'm glad we're here. And when she talks about forgiveness, that's another way of we're trying to, before you can forgive, you have to go through the past so that you can create a path on how you can forgive and heal. Can I ask you the same question? How do you think the genocide impacted you today?
It changed me forever. But I'm here. And through me, the ones I lost, they live.
I see you.
Good afternoon. What we just seen is one story in so many stories of genocide survivors. Every story is unique and painful in its own way. Antoinette is one of us. The next story is, as you can see, the picture on the screen, is also one of so many, and I will take you through the journey of Gidanse Kaitesi, the lady you see on this photo. She's a genocide survivor. I will just tell you what she had to endure during the genocide, before the genocide, and after the genocide. Gidanse was born in Kigali, Rwanda, in a family of 7, both her parents and 4 siblings. She had a normal childhood until she started school. You have seen in Antoinette's testimony that in school, she was always asked to either raise her hand or stand up or be sent away just because of who she was, and she even had no idea who she was. So at school, Gidanse was also persecuted, as it was common for Tutsi school children. When the genocide started in 1994, Gidanse was only 11 years old. But she wasn't home. She was away visiting her auntie, whose name is Therese, in Nyamirambo, one of the well-known neighborhoods of Kigali City. When the killings began, like many other Tutsi families, Gidanse fled with her auntie's family, leaving their home to seek shelter at the nearest Islamic mosque. But as you can see on this photo, with her healed head scar, Gidanse could not escape the killings. During the genocide, her head was cut through with a machete. When this happened, all she remembers was waking up among dead bodies in the area where Tutsis who were fleeing the killings were gathered by their killers before their fate. Only a handful of them survived, and most survivors suffered serious or fatal injuries. On that day, Judas lost her oldest cousin. She also realized that she has severe head injury. She was numb and could no longer speak. One of her younger cousins, who also survived, was shot in the arm, on the nose, in the cheek, and the hip. Teresa, her auntie, and her husband were also still alive, but they realized that there was no escape and decided to return home, where they believed that they would at least die in dignity. And they were both killed later at their home, where they thought they would at least be killed with dignity. Judas, her cousin, and other wounded survivors were transported by a Red Cross rescue car to be treated at the Red Cross office in Kiovo. And when they arrived at the Red Cross, they thought that Judas was going to succumb to her serious injuries. So they decided not to waste the material treating her. Luckily, she remained alive until 3 days later, and her wounds were rotting, and worms were infested with worms that began moving around her neck. As she was not dead, then they decided to suture the wound, but it was done without anesthesia. Judas says that she never felt such pain again in her life. The Interahamwe militia and the military came to hunt them every day, trying to kill them. But they managed to survive long enough until the RPF Inkotanyi soldiers liberated the city, saving the survivors, including her and her cousin. Judas and her cousin were both taken to an orphanage in Kimihurura, and after some time, she was taken out of the orphanage and raised by one of her surviving aunties named Godebert. It was a new beginning for her, but she had not regained her ability to speak. But her memory was slowly recovering. She struggled in school, as she also had to start learning to speak from scratch like a toddler. She worked so hard, but she was able to speak again so many years later when she was in the middle high school. Even today, she has trouble pronouncing certain words. One thing that was very difficult for Judas was to accept that her own family was also affected. As a child, she thought that what happened was only because she was away. She couldn't wait to be reunited with her family to tell them what she had experienced. She didn't know that her parents and 2 of her siblings were also killed during the genocide against the Tutsi. Judas was tormented by the fact that her mom was no more. She kept looking for her secretly, and it took her so long to come to terms with the fact that she would never see her again. She always thought that her mom would suddenly show up one day, but at some point, she realized what happened and stopped waiting for her. This story is one of so many, as I said. Judas survived the genocide against the Tutsi. Two of Judas' brothers, Valens Kabarari and Didas Kanamugire, also survived. If you want to learn more about her journey and journeys of the genocide survivors, this is a book that she had published called A Broken Life, and there are many other books that are available for everyone to learn about our history that are available on different libraries and book markets. Like all of us, many survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, what happened to Judas 29 years ago doesn't define her. She's a survivor, but she had rebuilt herself. She's a happy mother of 3 beautiful children, and she raises them with the values of humanity. Judas currently lives in Karlsruhe, in Germany. She's a kindergarten teacher, and she also gives lectures on the genocide against the Tutsi and genocide prevention in high schools. She loves her life and hopes that a such tragedy will never happen again. A message to everyone here today is that we survivors are alive now and have hope for the future. We have managed to recover, even though it has been a difficult journey. Although our parents are no longer alive today, our children are their grandchildren. This gives us a reason to live, not only for ourselves, but also for those who have been killed only because they were Tutsi. We will always be grateful to the RPF in Inkotanyi for their selfless efforts to save few surviving Tutsi, and they managed to save our lives. The victims of the genocide against the Tutsi from Judas's family that we remember today are both of her parents, her father, Karist Kabarari, her mother, Genevieve Mugore Wabera, her brother, Focus Baganizi, her sister, Jeanette Uwamahoro, her auntie, Therese Munchwezi, and her husband, Damien Chondo, her cousin, Ange Mukunzi, Marie-Rose Umubyeyi, and Claire Intime Uwera. In my own family, I remember my grandparents, Kinyogote Leonidasi and Mukandekezi Antoinette, my uncles, Butera, Alphonse, Mambara Emmanuel, my aunties, Kamagaju, Nibagwire Liliane, Karkwego Hosanna, my cousins, Mutimura, Confiance, Ben Rugo, Niwe Mwari, Minganzima. The list is long. I will let you guys continue. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, good. Thank you for being so brave and sharing that testimony and taking a minute to remember your loved ones. We see you and we remember them with you. And thank you for sharing. We're going to open this space for genocide survivors or anyone who had a family who was killed during the genocide, because we understand that even the people who lived outside Rwanda had loved ones within the country. So even though they haven't gone through the genocide, but they have their loved ones that they would like to remember. This is a moment, come close. We want to give you the space and the time to remember your loved ones. So, and no pressure. It's if you feel like you can stand and come closer, that's great. And also if you can't, we see you, we hear you, and we celebrate you.
I'm here to remember my family. I wouldn't be able to recite all the names of my family members that were killed during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, but I can say at least the close one and the family members. I remember my father, Francois Ntaganda. He was killed by our neighbors, the one who were sharing everything and the daily life, and they killed him in a very painful way that I cannot repeat here. But every minute and every year, I will honor to remember him the whole time. I remember my great-grandfather, Kajigira Joseph, and his wife, Gaudence. He was killed and he was 95 years old by the people that he has been giving them what to eat. He gave them cows, he gave them where to live. But on top of that, they just chose to kill him. I remember my uncles, Hongori Adrien, my uncle Ntaganzwa Alex, my uncle Karangwa, and many other members of our family that were killed in different places in Rwanda. Through us, through the survivors of our family, we will live and we will try to achieve what they were not able to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Don't go. Stay with us. think I can.
It's okay. I feel you.
I remember my family. My father, Gateye. My mom. I came from a big family. My dad used to say, they have killed us for a long time. I'm going to have as many kids so that to replace those who are gone. And these men worked his butt off to provide for his family and did everything he could for his kids. And 2 months before the genocide, February 22nd, Hutu militias Impuza Mugambi n'Interahamwe came to our house in Gikondo. We lived close to one of the Habyarimana close friend, Wichana. He was also like a political leader. And on February 21st, he was killed. And what they did, they decided that any Tutsi who lived in that area where he lived is going to be killed to revenge his death. And on February 22nd, around 3 p.m., over 200 Interahamwe militias came to my house. They caught some of my brothers and my dad and my mom. And they thought Daddy was dead, so they ran into the house. For some of us little kids, the moment we heard that they were coming, Dad and my mom were like, we know we have Hutu neighbors, but let's throw the kids over the fence. If they die, at least we know who killed them, or they're going to have mercy. And 8 of the people who stayed at home were caught. And my dad, thinking that he was dead, because they wanted my dad first, and everyone wanted to take turn cutting him with machetes. For many survivors, the stories didn't just start in April. Many of us have endured so much already. By the time the genocide started in April. So my daddy was in a hospital, and even that, they had to disguise who he was. They had to pay off some nurses not to say his name because they didn't know that he survived. And by April, we had already left our house in Gikondo. Young kids who were sent at my grandma's Gitarama because we couldn't be in Kigali. They kept saying, we want that family, we want the family. And that was the last time I had a family. That was the last time. That February 22nd was the last time I was ever with my both parents and being in a home, calling a family. And I was only 11 years old. So by the time the genocide began, I don't want to say we were already used to it, but we already so traumatized. And many of us, the moment we separated in February, again, that was the last time we were ever family. And 12 of my siblings were killed during the genocide. And my dad died because of injuries he sustained on February 22nd. I remember my aunties, my uncles, my grandparents. If all survivors would stand here and say their names, we will now go home because the list is endless. But as survivors stand here, we're here, we're thriving, we're doing the best that we can. And this is his father. She just became a doctor. How incredible is that? Janvier's great actor in the stunt. Look at us. I can stand here and say a few words in English. It's a miracle. But we're here. And we're not only surviving, we're thriving. And we are why our parents hoped and prayed. And I'm glad we're standing here today saying that we miss them and we remember them and we honor them by waking up every day and doing that the best that we can by thriving in our lives. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all. It takes courage to actually open mouth and remember, but we have to. Thank you. Surviving is also living for others who are supposed to be here, but who were killed because of who they were. And it's so hard to imagine that there's many families that nobody survived, like yeah. My aunt's family. Maria and his other one, Matthias, and his 6 kids. No one is survived in that family. I even remember. Sorry, I remember their names, but there's some maybe nicknames. There's 5 kids, 5 boys and one girl. We used to call her Rufina, and the youngest was Ephraim, Sustain. We used to call him Sosi, Mazembe, his real name was Gilbert, Patrick, and Manuel were the same age. My mom used to say that I'm one who saved everyone. We're the first to be in a church, the parish, because we knew priest and we had a landline. They called us and said the gendarme will come looking my father, and they're like, if you don't find Katarogas in here, please bring the youngest. I was known as an athlete, do all kind of sports and drums, and they came, but we already left to the priest, and there was a guard. They beat him, and then he never came back to stay at a place. And then being in that church, I remember going to my grandma Severina. She joined us later, a few days later, and then I went to fetch water for her because they cut the pipe that was bringing water. And then when I went, my gymnastic teacher took me, brought him to his house, and gave me food and everything. And I didn't come. And when I came, my mom came yelling at him and say, you know, my son will be killed. What did you do and everything? And then he told us that we're not safe because back in the days, people used to go to the church and survive. Then they sometimes get help to go outside with a priest, a Berger priest was used to help them to go Burundi everywhere. That's how my uncle left. Went to Uganda, and he told us we were not safe. We thought he was joking, and the next day they threw grenades. 16 people died. That's when we knew we were not safe there. And we started going different neighbors and everything. She was old. She couldn't. So as my aunt, I told you, who just came back from Burundi. They were killed there in that church, in the paroisse. And Alice is the one who managed to escape and went to Butare. Butare was before the genocide started. They knew she went there. And they followed her to Butare, to Bahata, to Salome. She had a husband who was a Congolese. So it was before in Butare they started killing. They killed her. And Salome in front of their kids, and they forgive the husband because of the Congolese. Sorry.
It's hard to stand here and share these stories. It's even harder to try to say their names because they're so real in our hearts. They're so real, as if you can feel them, you can touch them. We also remember those families that were completely wiped out. Our families are grateful that we're still standing, but there are families that were completely wiped out. And those families don't have anyone to say their names because there's absolutely nobody. And we're gonna take a moment and we light a candle for those we know, those we didn't know, those we can say their names, those who we never have their own to say their names. We're gonna take a moment and we will ask to stand up if that's okay. Thank you. Turagira turagira umwanya wa youth.
It's not easy to pour our heart in front of people and try to say what happened to us, because nothing is close to the reality that we lived. But we try our best, and we hope you understand. This is a moment that we dedicated to the audience, especially young people who didn't live through this tragic history. If you have any questions regarding to this commemoration, if you have something that is not clear in your mind, if you want to ask us questions as people who lived through it, we will try our best to answer. And if you have any question, you can stand in the row, and we can bring a mic and we will be here to answer your questions.
And before we start this moment dedicated to youth, I'd like to invite Ange Mukunzi and come join with us. And she has a few words to share with other youth. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Ange Mukunzi Bazuagira. I am 25 years old and a student here in Vancouver. I was born and raised in Rwanda, and so I've had the privilege of living in a peaceful Rwanda. I would like to echo my thanks to the organizing committee of this event as we join Rwandans and Friends of Rwanda in commemorating for the 29th time the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. I would like to recognize every survivor present here today. I would like to commend your courage in sharing your testimonies. We see you and we honor you and we stand with you. And it is our duty to safeguard your stories and uphold your truths so that we never forget and so that this never happens again. And as they mentioned in this moment, we would like to open up the floor for a Q&A to the youth in attendance today. You could be Rwandan, you could be from any other nation, and it doesn't really matter what age you are. If you have questions that you would like to ask, feel free to do so, and I urge you to take advantage of this opportunity, for who better to learn from than the people that lived through these experiences. So thank you once again.
You can also stay here with us and represent youth. And if you have some responses to help to answer the questions, stay here. It's good that we have young generations. As you know, genocide, young people were involved. So as rebuilding the country to stop the genocide, young people contributed. So to have a future that we hope is going to be better, we need young to be with us, especially nowadays that we have denials, to stay to the cause, and together through young people, I think we'll be able to have a better future where I will once and for all say never again, because never again was first used after the genocide of Jews. And a few decades later, history repeated itself because nobody knows. Thank you. If anybody has a question, we're here for you. And if not, I want to recommend you this book. This is a bilingual book. It's written half in French and half in English, but same story. Written by a dramaturge, Rwandan, who happened to be also my sociology teacher. You know him. He wrote this book called Le génocide perpétré contre les Tutsis du Rwanda expliqué à ses enfants. In English, the genocide perpetrated against the Tutsi of Rwanda explained to his children. This is a good tool for teachers, for young people who were born after 1994 genocide. There is I would say, all answers for questions you may, be, or for what you hear outside of people. He did a good job. Wrote a story of a father and a mother, survivors who survived, who were trying to explain their children how, and tell them the story and the history of the genocide. It's painful to try to explain these atrocities, this delicate subject as the genocide against Tutsi. But he tried, he did a good job, because it's not something that you can answer in one day. And it was him actually talking to the kids and explaining them and bring them to the memorials so they can see history themselves. I recommend you this book. I have a few copies, but you can also find it on Amazon. And these 5 copies is $30 per book. If anybody wants this, we have a few copies here. Thank you.
Still no questions in the audience? Yeah? Okay.
I don't have any question, but I want to tell you, I am over 80 years old. What happened in Rwanda in 1993, I started seeing it travel from 1963. People were being killed from all that time. You talk about 1959, but me, I started seeing it 1963. People dying, people being killed for no reason. For, you know. It was horrible. I saw it. But then I say myself, what is the solution? I don't think we human, we can solve the problem. No, we are the cause of problems. We can't say we can solve the problems when we are the cause of problems. But as I studied the Bible, I realized I believe there is a devil who is causing problems. And I know there is God who allow him to cause the problems. God allows him to cause the problems. I'm more than 8 years. Today I can't read any other book except the Bible because it comforts me. It is a true book. And if we all believe there is God, shouldn't we speak? So today is speaking by Bible. Just I don't stay long talking more and more. I can spend a day and a night talking about this. I will let you go. But God speaks through the Bible these days. Thank you for giving me time to say what I think.
Thank you for your input. I think faith and religion is it's a it's really a huge topic, and I would say that some people, some killers, killed in the name of God. It's a huge topic. I don't think I will go there. I thank you for your comment, and I think as people also have to take some responsibility, and accountability is also important, and we have to be mindful of that, look at our responsibility, and for those who have faith, I think in their own ways, they have their way to communicate with their God. And I think for those who believe God is more powerful than the evil, which I think the power is still on the side of those who believe. And I thank you for bringing up that aspect as well. Yeah.
Thank you. And for more questions, I recommend you that book. So the following moment, we had a guest, um, a friend of Rwanda, also a friend of a widow genocide survivor, who happened to be here with us today, Dean Seminov. First went to Rwanda in 2015, sorry, and has since traveled there 10 times now. He's a master instructor in the martial arts and has used his experience to develop a unique program that empowers people and provide healing for those suffering PTSD. Master Dean is also founder of a Canadian charity that has partnered with Avega Agahozo to bring this training to genocide widows. And they have now reached more than 600 people in Rwanda. His team is committed to training all 19,000 members of Avega Agahozo. This enhanced resilience training is being used for all ages and many other countries. I want to welcome Master Dean. He has a few words to share with us. Thank you.
Marakoze cyane. Marhaba everyone. Merewe neza. It's very hard to speak after those testimonies. And even for me, I've heard hundreds now and in small groups, but I have to say this was some of the most difficult I've heard these today. But I'm so proud, first of all, thank you to the leaders, the Rwandan community. I'm so happy to see a community coming together, and the leaders, thank you for inviting me. But thank you for doing this. It's so important, and of course the testimonies today are so important for never forgetting. If we don't do this, we don't even want to think about what could happen. So thank you for the courage, all of you, to do this today. And going forward, us as a community, us as a country, Rwanda, need to be healthy and strong to make sure never again. So there's so many things going on. There's the grief and the suffering and the trauma. of what happened, but we can grieve but still heal. And this is the work we're doing with what we call enhanced resilience training. So I'm here today. I was thinking, even as I'm listening to the testimonies, sometimes I say, Jean-Pierre, what am I doing here? Why am I here? But I know there's a purpose of why I'm here, why I was called to Rwanda. As Jean-Pierre said, I've been there 10 times now. When we do the work there, we work with groups of 20. So the specialized training is called Enhanced Resilience Training. And we work with groups of 20 women at a time over a period of 20 hours. So we do 4 hours a day for 5 days. And the training involves a combination of physical training, some self-defense, some different kinds of exercises, and lots of games, and just having fun, actually. And you see these old widows, some of them aren't that old, some are my age, but they're having fun. They're laughing. But they're also grieving still as well. But they're learning about trauma as well. And some of you will know, especially some of the older people in Rwanda, there was no word for trauma. Many of them, we talk about, they don't know what is trauma. They're living it, they're suffering it, but they don't know what is trauma. And so educating them about that actually gives them a lot of freedom as well. That why do I feel this way? Why is my body suffering? Why do I have all these PTSD symptoms? When we educate them about trauma, that frees them up. Oh, I'm not broken. Oh, trauma doesn't have to be a life sentence. I can be healed. And so we've seen amazing, amazing healing with the work that's happening there. So quickly, I just want to share a couple of short little testimonies. First off, I started to say, why am I here? I'm here for those 19,000 widows that are in Rwanda today that need this training. So I work through a registered Canadian charity that we do fundraising so that we can deliver this training in Rwanda. And I'm here for all of you. I'm here for this Rwandan Canadian community. In any way I can serve you guys. But our widows, they become my extended family. I'm actually quite homesick for them right now. It's been almost a year since I've been back, about 11 months. But it kind of feels like home with being with a lot of you here today. So now I want to finish just with some encouragement, because we've heard these stories that are just, even when you hear them, even when you feel something, you can't imagine. This is all unimaginable. But these widows, as they go through the training and experience healing, what's happening is a lot of that's happening through community. I didn't realize, working out in the country in Rwanda, I've been to Nyagatare and all the way down to Rusizi. And so our last large project was in a district called Rusizi. And we worked with, in 2021, even with COVID, we were able to go through and train 420 women in 2021. And part of that was sort of a big pilot project to see how many people could we train and what the success rate would be. And it was phenomenal, the success rate. And so that all that information is available from me anytime. You can get a hold of me after this. But I want to give a message of hope, because there is healing from trauma. And we've seen it. I've seen it firsthand. The women testify. So we have many good videos. We can't play here today, but I can share them with you, of these women testifying their healing, that they have now joy in their heart after this. One training I was working on, it was about day 3, Wednesday morning. We go Monday to Friday, and I arrive in the morning around 8 a.m. The training starts for 4 hours. So I walk into the room, and we're in the typical community hall in Rwanda, cement building, cement room, and walk in. And the first thing I say, of course, is Moramatsi, good morning, Amakuro. And so as soon as I say that to these ladies, there's 20 women there. They were already there probably for half an hour warming up, excited about the day and waiting for us to arrive. And I say Amakuro, and I'll never forget this for the rest of my life. And in unison, they shout out, "Can't you see?" Can't you see? As a question, and their smiles were beaming ear to ear. They're not looking in the mirror. They're saying to me, "Can't you see?" But they're feeling it inside how happy they were. So they're saying to me, "Can't you see?" And we could. Again, we got limited time today, but there's many great testimony stories like that. Got a close friend I have to acknowledge, Xaverine, today. Such a courageous woman. She was vice president of Avega Agahozo for a long time. She's just stepped down now, but we're close friends. Xaverine today is probably out in her community working with other people, using some of the tools we've given to her, with no funding, no support, no help, and out there helping her community. So taking the healing that she's had, the help that she's had, she's out in her community, her and her friends. So there's a group of 20 I trained with Xaverine that they're out there now working in their community to help their neighbors and friends. So there's amazing people there. One of the things that happens in trauma as well is that we lose our sense of identity. With everything so devastating, and it's like we lose our sense, who are we? And these powerful women, and you survivors here, you have that inside you already. In trauma, that kind of gets covered up a little bit, but it can come back out. And when we ask these women, we do this through the training, who are you? And they say, I am strong, I am beautiful, and I am loved. That's their mantra they say to themselves every day. I am strong, I am beautiful, and I am loved. So thank you again for the honor to be here today and share this with you. Manakosi Chani.
Thank you, Master Dean. And you can see more information of his charity after we finish. But we are closing our ceremony. I would love to invite Dr. Giselle, who is happened to be also Vice President of Rwandan Community here in BC, to you have something to say.
Before Giselle closes our ceremony, our event, I wanted to take a moment again to thank each one of you for being here today, for supporting us. If I can steal that slogan, we feel loved, we feel supported today. And our community, we can't thank you enough. When you get a chance, stay around and say hi, and let's get to know each other. So thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you, Dean, for the work you are doing for the genocide survivors. As we started our reflection day today, I would like to again remind everyone that this is the 29th commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. This happens every year, and it starts on the 7th of April. And in the following 100 days, we honor the memories of our families, friends, and loved ones. Over 1 million victims of the genocide against the Tutsi who were killed in only 100 days. And this is only in 1994. We do not account from every killings that happened since 1959, 1963, 1972. And as we end this reflection, I would like to give special recognition to everyone here present, and especially my fellow genocide survivors, for your courage and resilience. We honor everyone's struggle, and we recognize that you go through a healing journey every day, and we know that it's not easy. I would like to remind everyone present here today that it's our duty to remember. We remember to refute the genocide denial with truth and facts. You saw yourselves, people who lived through this, telling you their stories. You have seen how hard that is. We remember to ensure that the memory of the victims of this genocide is protected. And most importantly, that such atrocities do not happen again. And on behalf of the genocide survivors, we thank you for being our allies in this journey. And on behalf of the Rwandan community in Vancouver and the Office of Community Engagement here at Simon Fraser University, who planned this event, we thank you. And we also thank the technical team, and special thanks to Nadine, who stayed up there helping with running this show, which was really successful. And we thank every one of you. Let's keep the memory of the victims of the genocide against the Tutsi alive. Dukomeze twibuke twiyubaka. And to conclude this day, I would also like to acknowledge that here, this place where we stand, is the unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Coquitlam, Coquet, Kwantlen, and Samiamo, and Sawasan peoples. So we acknowledge everyone, and please stay around, and we would like to meet every one of you. And yeah, thank you so much. Dukomeze twibuke twiyubaka. Murakoze.